Welcome back to the R&B show. Look. Y'all know the drill by now. I'm not even going to give a full introduction. I got Torian Henderson right next to me, right here. This guy.
You're not going to give me a full introduction?
I am.
Okay,
Can I finish? Continue. I wanted y'all to see real quick because you have to understand our relationship. Like, you have to understand. And plus, I mean, he got too many titles, man. He was like on the radio for Weatherman. He's Mr. Just Another Monday. He's a whole artist. He's a creative. He does anything that he wants to do. And he's stylish today, you know.
I cannot argue with that.
You know. Hey man, he's a food aficionado. He can tell you all the great places.
I'm with you when you're right.
To go eat and stuff. You know, people love. He's actually probably my other celebrity on here outside of Mame Foy so far, because you know,
no, Mame is a celebrity.
No, I mean, but you can't go nowhere without
people. She's a queen of BR Top.
You can't go nowhere. Torian this, Torian that. You make one post a quarter, and people go crazy. Oh my gosh, Torian just posted. You know it's true.
Oh, it's true.
So, welcome to the show, my guy.
Thank you. I am finally glad to be in this space. It's beautiful. I love this wall behind me.
There we go. Look.
A lot.
Since we're talking about the wall and the space, Journey Well Studios, we're right here sponsoring this episode. Look, so you need content to be created. You need some photographers. You need some videographers. You need, your own show, your own podcast. This is the one-stop shop, man. Look, I put my name on this. Y'all know I don't put my name on anything. So, y'all good. So, and also like, comment, subscribe, because, if you ain't subscribed, we ain't cool. So, don't ask me for anything if you're not subscribed.
My God.
Hey, but he's true.
He
is true.
Absolutely.
He is true. But man, you know what? Let's just jump straight into some of the stuff that you're doing right now, because you've been in the shadows. You've been real quiet.
I have.
Why you been quiet, bruh?
I have because at this great big age of mine, I've learned the importance of operating through silence and learning the vitality of being able to work in an isolated moment, because that's when the purest things come out. So being a creative, especially in the realm of music, my whole mantra was I didn't want to put out something that was going to be whimsical. I didn't want to be a pop hit. I didn't want to have something that was just a catchy phrase or something. I want something to be relatable. My dad would say something that'll stick to your ribs. That's the type of content I wanted to produce, and that takes time to bring to fruition. There are moments where you have to be shut away to be able to bring something worth great quality. So that's what I'm learning. At times you want to go out and hang out and be a part of the social gatherings and whatnot, but sometimes that comes after you have your product. You can network and you can find people. Shout outs to social media, because that's really what got me to where I am. But there are times and seasons where you have to actually perfect that craft. You actually have to work to sharpen your skill, and that involves you taking time out of your schedule or dedicating time in your schedule to specifically work towards those things. Like if you don't know your purpose, you got to find your purpose, and then once you do that, you refine who you are in your purpose, and that's what opens the doors right there.
So speaking of purpose, because I get asked that a lot from a lot of people. People are always trying to seek their purpose and find their purpose. What helped you? How did you find your purpose?
I always knew my purpose was musical, and it was something that was foretold even before I was born. My mom's prayer was that all of her children would be musically inclined. And so, my mom sang, my dad sang, so I knew it was always music. I didn't think it was singing at first, because I didn't sing.
I know.
I didn't sing. They had me sing, what was that song? One more time, he's allowed us to come. That was my first and last solo at Greater Mount Zion Baptist Church in DeQuincy, Louisiana. That was it. After that, I didn't sing publicly until I was, an adult. My sisters were always the singers, so I was like, we all started off playing piano too, but I stuck with that. And I just realized that I realized the purpose in that because I understood the weight of it. There were times where I would play and I would get so sleepy and I'd fall asleep. And that was for years, and I just didn't understand what that was. And I knew that even when I was playing, like, I may not be as eclectic as a lot of other people, but I knew that at times when I played, it calmed people's spirits, almost like the whole David thing. You know, so I knew that there was a purpose in that. And then even me, I felt fulfilled when I was able to do things musically, whether I would sing or write or be around musical people. I knew that was my purpose. And that's really the thing that's been opening doors for me. Like, anything outside of music has been something that had a cap. Mm-hmm. But with music, I could always go to another level, another source of income, another wave of influence. It was through music, you know? So that brought me to working in radio and doing promotions, and then going on to, because I was singing with a group before that, but I was able to be in studio sessions and watch big name artists operate, whether it was in gospel or any other genre, you know? And because I had a passion for that and I knew I loved that, that's how I knew that was my purpose, you know, because that's where my drive came from, and I was very, very, very drawn to it.
So when did you find that moment that you knew that, first of all, you got a pen and you knew you could write, and that you had to start leaning into your own uniqueness, because your music is not like anything else. Like, it has its own sound. Like, and I know that's, well, I know that has been something, because coming from the church culture, mm-hmm. everybody thinks that you have to have one specific sound.
That's right.
And so when it doesn't come out that way, they think, you know, you done sold your soul or whatever else. But when did you find that moment that you knew you had that pen and you needed to lean into that individually?
When I started to write things that affected me. When I would write from a certain place and it was like a healing would come from myself. Like, I would feel better, not just because I let it out or it was like an outlet. It was because I went back and read it and it was like, whoa, you know? And another way I identified it is when I would write things or I would come up with melodies that I knew I could not do on the strength of my own. I knew it was a divine influence. That's when I knew that God's hand was on it and that it wasn't a gift for me to contain, you know, just for myself.
So why you sit on it for so long?
Fear.
Fear. And how'd you overcome that fear?
How I'm overcoming that fear, because I'm still scared. What it is, just noticing or knowing that you have to operate in your God-given purpose. You have to. Because number one, that's why you're here on earth. Number two, everything outside of that is meaningless. Anything outside of your purpose that you're doing right now is not set to be successful, or it's not going to gain the heights that are intended for you. So when I realized that I was circling, just wanting to do all these other kind of side projects, even though my passion was music, it was like, you know, go for the music. Don't try to get this other certification. Don't try to start this other new career or whatever. Bet on yourself. Bet on the gift that you're giving, the talent, the skill, you know? And so I'm not gonna lie, I'm at a point where, like they say, you do it scared. That's literally where I am. I am doing it, but not out of a fear of failing. I had a fear of success.
Explain that.
Oh, I was scared that people would like it for a long time. Like, even my closest friends didn't know how musically inclined I was, because I always put that on the back burner, because I really felt like if I did showcase my gift, people would think I was too much, or I was showing off, or I was all trying to be all that. And, you know, that was like I would say, honestly, I think that was a tactic of the enemy, to be honest with you. Because I already had the foresight that was going to happen. And like some people say, you know, we always dwell on what could go wrong instead of what could go right. Mm-hmm. So I was stuck on what could go wrong. even though I think I always had a feeling that I had something different to bring to the table, and that's another reason why I was fearful, because I was different. My sound was different, and I wasn't called to do the exact same thing that the people in my surroundings were doing. And that was something that was hard for me. To be called to do something and to be set apart from the people that you've grown up with, the people who you're always around, it hurts. Because one of the biggest fears of mine, to be honest with you, to elaborate on that, was I was a serial people pleaser. I couldn't do what God wanted me to do because I felt like it conflicted with what other people wanted from me. And that induced a lot of fear, because I was like, well, if I do that, then I'm not going to please certain people. You know, I'm not going to fit in their box, and that's going to anger them, and I don't want to anger anybody. I want everybody to love me. I want everybody to be okay with me, not realizing that no matter what you do, somebody's going to be mad at you, but somebody's going to be glad too.
Where do you think that came from? You think that started in like DeQuincy before you moved to Baton Rouge? Absolutely. A preacher's kid. The son of Reverend Henderson. You know, when I was a kid, I always wanted to be around my dad. So he was a preacher, and every time he went to church, as a little kid, I always wanted to go. Brotherhood meeting, prayer circle, going see about the sick and shut in. I wanted to be everywhere. And he was a singer, and when he would get called to go sing places and go preach places, I would always tail up behind him. And then even when I got older enough to play behind him, I was excited to do that. And all the older people would be like, "That's a little preacher right there. That's gonna be a little preacher." I love doing that.
And I went with it for a while, but as I got older, I was like, I may not be called to be behind a pulpit, but I do think that my gift is to be shared on a mass level. So people can experience the message through me, no matter what it is. And sometimes it may not be packaged the way that, other people expected, but it still has to be given. So I will say, yeah, it started out there. Being a PK, having to always be in the light
under a
of
microscope.
Other people, because we had the stigma. Preachers' kids are the worst kids. Now, whether that was true or not, I mean, there was no fighting it, because the spotlight was always on us, always, and you had to do everything right. And so from there, I stopped myself from making certain decisions. I stopped myself, growing up, I just thought, well, I'm not going to this place, I'm not going to this party because, I want to stay holy and stay sanctified and set apart for the masses' use. That was my biggest thing. So it wasn't because I had an actual relationship, it was me confining to what I was taught. So it was religion over relationship at the time. So, I channeled what I felt God would be pleased with by what God's generals were pleased with. So that's where that came from.
Ooh, you unpacked a lot, because that's one thing I did hate about DeQuincy, and I'm very, very passionate about. Like, look, if Miss Heckert wasn't in DeQuincy, that would be that's the only reason I go back.
Oh yeah.
That's the literally only. I could not, when my dad got moved to Kentwood, Louisiana, it was like I won the lottery. Like you deal with, first of all, the people within the church, like in your own specific, church, and whether you agree or not, being a PK, being active, even me being an AME at the time, I was on the connectional international level, like, holding offices, running and doing all this kind of stuff, watching people try to nitpick at what you're doing or what you're not doing, and being blatant in their own actions, in that sense. And so I tell people, my mouth get me in trouble, because I'm going to tell you about yourself, and I'm going to call you out, and I don't care what your age, what title you hold, whatever else. Then, my godmother, Miss Mary, out here at the First Church God in Christ. Navigating all that situation, and then navigating the actual racial culture in in DeQuincy. And that's a whole story in itself. And like I said, we're very similar, you know, in a lot of ways, and have a lot of experience because I loved being around my dad. So when he's at his meetings, I'm gonna be right there with him. He's doing this. This is where, you know, initially, like a lot of people, you know, like y'all know, like he was a video guy and everything else, and I'm up here learning, you know, all this stuff, running sound and everything else at this small age, revivals and all this kind of stuff, and it helped. Really, I didn't know then where I'm at now, and so like, how did you being there all the time with your dad, and I know he knew what was inside you and what God had for you. As you know, you might not have known now, but now hindsight is 2020.
Right.
That he helped like plant those seeds and nurture what you're doing now.
Well, my dad was a very wise person. So before ChatGPT, there was Reverend Henderson. I could ask him anything, and he was going to give me an answer. So his wisdom is what I drew from a lot. And as I got older and I started to learn my own identity as a person, I was like, there are still things about my dad that I didn't understand, and his drive to help people and, you know, give his last to, you know, be around them, and even, you know, there wasn't a point where I can say my dad wasn't in the house. I'm blessed to say I came from a 2-parent household and my dad was always there. But because of the sake of ministry, there were times where he was not there. And that's the one thing that I think a lot of people outside of the PK region don't understand. That and my sister said that in the video that we did for his homegoing service. She didn't realize, and we didn't realize, you know, that we have to share him with the world, you know, at large, because he was one of God's chosen. You know, he was anointed for that cause. So to see how he would operate, and I saw where he was done wrong. I saw where there were moments where he was misunderstood. I saw where people intentionally did things to hurt him, you know, and for the sake of ministry. And I saw those things and I said, well, God, I don't think that's for me, because unlike my daddy, I will flip some tables and rearrange some skulls. But God was like, no, that ain't for you, you know. And you can have a heart to do those things, but I'm not going to say I wasn't built like that. It was just that I was the type of person that was not going to allow that type of stuff to stop me, you know, from what I was doing, or I wasn't going to let that stuff hurt me. But then on top of that, I wasn't going to let that go unnoticed. I was going to address it, kind of like you. Like, I'm going to say it. Our dads, who were good friends, my dad loved your dad. He really did. And it's full circle that our dads were friends. We're friends. You know, and understanding like where they were in ministry and how the call was on them and the pull was on them, and to translate to us, now we're reaching more people outside of the pulpit, you know, and outside of what church society would deem where we're supposed to be. It's very unconventional. It's been disruptive.
Let's talk about it. No, let's talk about it. Let's go there.
Or
let's go there. Cause there's some people real still mad at me that I'm not at my last church.
Yeah.
Anchor Chapel. I told you we drop names around here. Real upset at me because God moved me to be in a more impactful way that he wanted, while also not being in a place that started being, or my talents being used for them and not for God.
Yeah. And
so God said, okay, you got to go. But now it's like, I'll put this. I ran, I was at a wedding. And so I ran to one of the elders of the church. Now, you know, at the time we were still really, really good. And he was like, well, I just want to make sure that, you know, you're somewhere and you're covered. And I was like, who said I'm not covered?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know my other relationships? Do you know the people and everything else?
Yeah.
Just because I'm not in a physical church right now doesn't mean I'm not covered, because we're the church, right?
Right.
I said, who says I wasn't the covering for y'all?
Well,
you know, but it reminds me, like, you know, also something that, you know, you spoke last year around like September, October.
I did.
And you were talking about how God was pulling certain people out as a marker.
Yeah.
You know, as a marker, because wisdom is proven by its results of his certain chosen ones for different things that he's calling the unconventional to be done to reach the people that has been forsaken.
Yeah.
And you're like, watch how there's a lot of people that's been holding the weight of a lot of ministry.
Oh, yeah.
And God is not going to place them immediately back somewhere. And some of them he's going to force out. Like.
Yeah, so to be honest, and because you know how I feel about this, so I'm not going to say the name, but where I served in ministry, don't you say it, where I served, you know, I had to learn that when you're moved or transitioned, that doesn't mean you failed where you were. When you pass the third grade, you go on to the fourth grade. You leave that teacher, you leave that classroom, and you go on to the next place. When you go from kindergarten to first grade, no more naps, no more snack time. You know, you've graduated because you passed the test. You know, so when I was immediately, and I mean with no warning, removed from where I was serving, and I'm telling you, it bothered me for a while, because when you know you don't have to do everything perfect to know that you're still doing the right thing. Like, it may not be perfect, but it still was falling in line, you know? And to be, you know, just in one meeting, like, oh, we appreciate everything you've done for the music ministry. You've done a great job. But it just seems like this is, you know, it's time to change. It's time to change. It looked like you've been struggling the past few Sundays. So, you know, this is the end of the road for us. Now, this was coming from who was my actual pastor. This wasn't just a church that I was just, you know, a hireling at. I joined the church because I really felt the message and the movement behind the ministry. And when that happened, I was just hurt. You know, I left that meeting just saying, you know what, God, it's in your hands. Because one of the things that the pastor did say, he said, there are several things that God has called you to do that's going to take you away from being loyal, or not loyal, that's not the word he used. He said, from being faithful every Sunday. Mm-hmm. And I understood that because it was. I had put my album on the back burner while I was doing that. I did. For 2.5 years, I didn't even step in the studio because I was like, let me focus on this. And going back to what we were saying about operating in your purpose, don't do that. What you're called to do, what you're really called to do, that's what you're supposed to work towards. God will allow you to be in certain seasons where you're going to sit and absorb and learn. And then when it's time for you to go, you need to quickly move. But when you don't move in God's timing, he's going to eject you like a cassette tape. And that's exactly what happened. The ties were cut like that. And I was just like, wow, you know, if you tell somebody, you know, this is the end of the road for us, or this is where we go our separate ways, and I'm a member of the church, that's like, ooh. But I had to use my spiritual mindset and say this was God creating the release. Mm-hmm. Sometimes man don't say it right. He's a human. Sometimes he doesn't say it in the right words, but you have to take it for what it was. And I promise you, like I told you when I called you that day, it was like God was saying, don't ask any questions, just move. And then the next day, God was just like, this is the reason why you left. And I was like, oh, I was hearing so many things and I was seeing things. I was like, Lord, I couldn't see that from the inside out. I had to see it from the outside.
And a lot of times people don't understand that separation is sometimes from God is protection.
Yes. Yeah.
And like I said, God sees, and he was like, I don't want you to be connected for what's about to come.
Yeah.
And a lot of people still don't understand how God works, because sometimes when you're under certain coverings and you're in certain places, because they're placed in a seat of authority, it's not necessarily that you're guilty by association, but you share in the punishment because you're connected to them.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times people are in places where I always tell people, you need to be asking God where you need to be at, you know, where you need to be worshiping at, what you need to be doing, how long. Because if God says you were never graced to be there, and then if I call down punishment or exposure or anything else, and you're connected to that, that's just like Sodom and Gomorrah. You know, and it doesn't have to be to that degree. Yeah. But you're in that vicinity.
It's true, because like they say, the worst place to be is where God used to be. But to add on to that, the worst place to be is where God used to be on your behalf. Because the thing about it is, the way God has always operated, biblical times, even up until now, God is going to meet you at your next. God is going to say, this is where you need to be, and I'll meet you over there. That's how that happens. So woe is me if I were to say, you know, God had left that church completely. God's hand wasn't on it. No, you know, and all of that is just demon and witchcraft. I can't say that. I can say on my behalf, God had already departed and was waiting for me at my next stop. But it was me holding on to that because it was familiar, it was comfortable, and it was still a good ground. So I was just like, oh, this is where I need to be planted. And God was just like, I didn't tell you to take up roots there. I didn't tell you that. This was just a place for you to be seasonally. And that's when I had to realize that you have to follow God the first time. The first time he gives that instruction, go then. It's going to feel weird because God's ways are not like ours. Right. So when he commands you or when he tells you, okay, it's time to move, when you hear that, you say, okay, God, all right, I'm curious. I want to know where I'm going. However, you said move, so let me just start moving. Like obedience. A GPS, he'll tell you where you're going while you're on the way.
Obedience is better than sacrifice.
It is.
You know?
It is.
And I think it's just and that's the biggest thing of like where God is showing us in his timing, because we don't want delayed obedience is still disobedience.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so I think a lot of times we get into that point of like, well, God, I did it anyway, but now there's consequences because I didn't do it in the timing. Yeah. And God has always been about timing. And I think we miss it so much in timing. And that's why I was so adamant about this show, because I didn't want to do the show. I was like, I'm busy enough as it is. I need to do this. And he was like, no, I called you into something because he said, I've had you be quiet for so long. Yeah. And so there's been plenty of times I wanted to, like I said, you know me, you know what, we're going to stop right here. We're not going to skate past what you just said. I don't care where we're at. Like, let's talk about it right now. And then God be like, Roland, shut up.
Come on.
Like shut up. Like, and I want to say something. I was like, well, God, he said, first of all, you don't have to defend me. I'm God. See, that's it right there. When God gives you something to do, when the people around you don't understand it, it's not for them to understand. Because like I said, God's ways, like the Bible says, is past finding out. Like we're not charged to understand him. We're just charged to follow him, So you get to those moments where it's like God tells you to do something. You're like, God, that don't make sense. It doesn't make sense because your mind isn't geared towards that. Just follow me. And like you said, God doesn't have to prove himself, and I had to get to those points to even compare that to my situation. I'm like, God, I've been pulled out of where I was. And because I'm not given a reason why I've been pulled out besides you saying it's time for me to go, because when I asked the
pastor, he was like, no, there's nothing you did wrong. No. It's just we're going in a different direction. I'm like, okay. Then to hear other things afterwards, it's like, you could have told me that then.
Right.
But you know what? Instead of me getting mad, me and you had that conversation the next day, and I told you, I said, I have to let God vindicate for me. I don't want to be a vengeful person in this season because I can't take that to where I'm going. You know, everybody wants to react to everything, but you can't do that. God specifically said to me, if you leave it alone, I'll heal it. I'm putting a Band-Aid over that. Stop taking it off to pick at the scab. I covered it for a reason. Not everybody's going to see certain things for a reason. I felt some type of way because, and I promise you, I'm a healed person. I'm not mad at anybody. I'm not. But I did feel some type of way, like when things would be promoted and stuff, like they had like a video that would go before the service or whatever that would show, you know, praise and worship and all kinds of other things. I was never in them, like the little montage. And I was like, oh, that's weird. And then it even went back to when I worked in radio. On the website for the radio station that I worked at, I was never on it. And I was there for 5 years. I was never listed on the website. And it was like God's way of saying, I don't want you to be attached to that. Because sometimes when we get attached to certain things and we relate to our past, or we have those different relics of our past, we start to idolize them. And that's what I didn't want. I didn't want people to just say, oh, that's Torian from. God was like, no, I want them to know that's Torian from whatever I want them to know. I don't want people to know you by your experience. Just let that experience speak for itself. You're seasoned. They don't need to know what you're seasoned with or how you got it. They just need to know you're seasoned. And that's how I was able to get over that. Because I felt like I was always put on the back burner. You know, or I never looked for the limelight. I promise you, I never did that. But when you're called to do certain things, you can't hide, you know? So I never wanted the glory. I never wanted the fame because I was always a nervous person. I always said I operated in fearful humility. I operated in fearful humility because I felt like if I didn't stay humble, God would take the gift away from me. And I'm here to tell, whoever wants to listen, here's your wake-up call. Humility is low-key a scam because sometimes when you're humble, it causes you to downgrade yourself just to match somebody else. When in fact, being humble is knowing who you are, your worth, and not letting nobody play in your face. But you don't have to, just go gallivanting and, being boastful about it, So that's what I had to learn about that. And like I said, I had to move on and I said, God, I let God vindicate for me because in this season, I can't be vengeful. Like even in this setting, I really didn't want to talk about that because I felt like, I'd moved on, but I really feel like somebody can identify with that. Whether they heard the name of the church or what, you can identify with the fact that sometimes we get ejected from where we were, how we felt prematurely, but it was actually past time, But the only time you're hurt because of transition is if you held on.
Oof. And you had to be ripped from it.
It's like taking a going back to the Band-Aid. You put a Band-Aid on, eventually the scar will heal and it's time to take it off. You kept it on because that you knew it healed that scar, so you wanted to hold on to it as a relic, as a trophy, saying, I made it through this. Now hair has grown up around it, so when you try to take it off now, it hurts. So it's time that we start moving when we're supposed to. It may feel premature, but that's because we're already speaking from a place of comfortability. We're comfortable. We're complacent. And I'm being honest with you. I'm the type of person, when it's good, I want to stay where it's good. Not realizing that God wants to take me to great and greater and greater and greater, No,
I'm always about putting the foot on the gas. And I think this is one of the I'd say the most difficult of navigating this specific show because I knew why God was calling me to this show. Yeah. And it was a reason why he had me quiet for so long. Mm-hmm. And then he's like, okay, I need you to speak, but it's not to call out, it's to hold accountability.
Yes.
So I've been in places and spaces where there's been manipulation, and you'll find it in a lot of churches where we'll cover things, but we won't hold people accountable to the things that we're trying to cover. Yeah. And so in turn, there's so many people that get hurt, or there's infliction, and they're never being in a space to be healed and delivered because the powers that be, or the powers that not be, are not held accountable. Yeah. And in the biblical standpoint of being in relationship with people, and they subscribe to the same thing that you subscribe, you say that you follow God, you follow Jesus, then we're allowed to hold you accountable. Now, if you don't follow that, you don't subscribe to that, I can't hold you accountable because you don't follow from that. Yeah. But if you say that and we're in relation, I can't talk about somebody else that I've never met before. Right. Or I don't really know anything else. But if I can call you, be like, hey, bro, that ain't it. Yeah. And
you have. He has.
And vice versa. In that sense. And I already knew it's going to cause trouble and disruption. But, I understand what God has called me to do, and I'm going to do it out of grace. I'm going to do it out of love. But it's also going to help people be freed and eyes to be open, in places for them to make their own decision. Yeah. When, how, where, how God tells you to make the decision, because I can only tell you what God allows me to say. Right. And after that, that's between you and God. But speaking of that, I did want to ask you one good question, man. How are you doing?
How am I doing? Yeah. How am I doing?
Yes.
I am doing well. I'm doing well. I'm not doing perfect. Mm-hmm. I'm not always at 100%, but I'm still breathing. My heart is beating, meaning I still have a purpose to fulfill. Mm-hmm. So I'm doing well. I'm not where I want to be, but thank God I ain't where I used to be. That's something Roland Baker would say.
It would be something he would say. And I'm saying that in honor of our fathers. Yeah. So, for who don't know, I lost my father October 13, 2012, 2 months and 1 day before my college graduation. And you recently lost.
Yep, February 6, 2022.
And so I wanted to ask you, from one brother to another brother who's has been in a similar situation, like, how are you dealing with that? Like, how's that been, that journey?
I honestly felt like I was not grieving correctly. My sister called me when my dad passed. She was like, where are you? Where are you? And I was like, I'm coming from New Orleans. What's wrong? She was like, Daddy died. And then she hung up. And I was like, ooh. And I sped down to get to the house. And the whole time, I promise you, Roland, I promise you, the moment she hung up from the phone, the first thing that came out of my mouth was, God, thank you. For 31 years, I had my dad. Or it was a couple of months before my 31st birthday. But for 30 years, I had my dad. A lot of people can't say the same. My dad never knew his dad, but I had my dad for 30 years. 5 years prior to, God had already prepared me for that. One day, I just woke up crying because he had to have this operation where they have to shock your heart back into rhythm. Mm-hmm. And I felt like I was going to lose him then. And I just prayed and I said, God, just prepare me for this moment. I don't want to lose him, but God, I don't want him to have to suffer. And God graced me and said, I'm not taking him now, but this is your moment to come to grips with it. That's why when he passed, I didn't shed a tear. I came to the house and watched them, take him out. Didn't shed a tear. I immediately started calling, the funeral home to make those arrangements. I was the only one that didn't cry. I had friends to call me crying, like, Torian, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, okay, well, let me let you deal with this, and I'm going to go, deal with that. And I thought it was so strange. I was like, why are my friends crying? Why are people that didn't know him as well as we did crying and stuff like that? And that was God's way of saying, I'm letting them cry for you right now. You handle business. And grief is going to be there. Because grief, I have to grieve that for the rest of my life. You know, so I think, like I said, the day he passed, I didn't cry. Throughout that entire funeral service, I didn't cry. You know? And people kept saying, you're the picture perfect example of strength. And I'm like, thank you. Because really and truly, I'm on the inside, I'm like, why am I not crying? I'll never forget his funeral. He had the biggest casket spray of roses on top. And I'm a man, and I can honestly say I love flowers. And I love roses, and I think I loved them more because I saw that it was one of the biggest, tallest sprays I'd ever seen. So we brought it back to my mom's house, and a couple of days later was Valentine's Day. And I was like, well, there's no reason to really get flowers for her because she has all those. So, you know, I'll just get her a card and a gift, and I'll get her a vase to kind of cover it up or to protect them. So I get home, and my friend Sierra was there. And we were just sitting there loving on my mom. This was her first Valentine's Day in 34 years without her husband. So I wanted to be there for my mom. And we were sitting down talking and laughing. Then I got up, and I realized I went to the store and didn't get one vase. And I broke down crying like a newborn baby. And my mom was just like, he's having his moment. He's having his moment. I cried because I didn't get vases. Not because my dad was gone. I cried because out of these nearly 400 or 500 roses in a house, I forgot to go get a vase. So I really felt like I wasn't grieving correctly. And I had to learn again, grief does not hit everybody the same. You know, that was my dad. That was one of my best friends. That was my dad. We were close. And I did not cry because I knew that in his death, number one, he was with his maker. To be absent from the body is likened to be present with God. So that was one of the best things. He was at rest. I always say if my dad could do anything, he could sleep. My dad loved to go to sleep. And I remember talking with one of my sisters afterwards, and she was like, we were talking with my mom too, and she was saying, my mom always believes that, you know, sometimes God lets that person see their own homegoing service or his funeral. She's like, I'm pretty sure your dad was proud. I said, Mom, I'm pretty sure Daddy was asleep. So, but I just felt like I wasn't grieving. My friends, they're always checking on me, and I appreciate them so much. But sometimes, like, I feel like I kind of make them uncomfortable because a lot of times I'd laugh and joke about stuff, and they're just like, they scared to laugh. I'm like, you can laugh. Even when he passed, I have this saying. I have this saying where I wake up every morning and I say, today's gonna be a good day, all day, by any means necessary. So basically what that means is I challenge myself, no matter what's gonna happen in the day, I control that by the narrative that I present, that no matter what happens, it's gonna be a good day. Roland Baker, I have made up in my mind that I would paint the state capitol using a step ladder and a Q-tip before I allow somebody to navigate how my day should be. Straight up. That's my whole mindset. So the day my dad passed, before I went to sleep that night, I said, you know what, today was a good day because family came over to support my mom. All of my best friends came to that house and was with my mom. That house was crowded with people, and it was crowded with love. And they were waiting for her hand and foot being there for her until she was just like, all right, y'all can go, I'm going to sleep, And that was a blessing. Then my dad passed in his sleep. It was unexpected. Like, there was no way you could have told me that day he was going to pass. But he passed away in his sleep, which was a prayer of my mom's. She was like, I don't want your dad to ever leave in a hospital bed. I want him to be in his bed at home. He can meet his maker like that. Also, a prayer for me was, I always said, people, and you know this, people already assume that I'm the spokesperson for my family. Even when my dad was alive, it was like, ask Torian. So everybody wants to get news and stuff from me. My prayer was I would be the last person to find out, because I don't know how I could convey that to one of my siblings. I was the last person to find out.
God, man, look, it's amazing like how much similar like our stories are in that sense, because once I started watching my dad literally deteriorate, and you never want to see that type of image.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, God, if you're not going to heal him physically, then heal him spiritually and take him.
Yeah.
And people look at me crazy when I say that was my prayer, because I cared for my father too much.
Yeah.
I loved him too much. And what helped me when he's passed is, I had him for 22 years. And in the 22 years I had my dad, I maximized my time with him.
Yeah. Yes.
It made me laugh, because my dad was like ChatGPT too. There was no question I couldn't ask him, and he didn't.
Wealth of knowledge,
and he didn't know the answer. And so, seeing that and kind of going through that, because death is a crazy thing, but I'm thankful for that God that prepared me for that, because I tell people all the time still, I was like, I don't understand it. Like literally, that's where I understood peace beyond all understanding.
Yes.
I was like, because I don't understand it. I'm, coming home, the next day, because my brother called me. He's like, when you gonna be home? And I'm like, I'll be home tomorrow. Like, I still got church to play for tomorrow, and then I'll come home. He's like, you ain't gonna come home today? I said, that's not gonna bring him back.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, even me pulling up at church, and the pastor and everybody was like, your dad just passed. What are you doing here? First and foremost, I need that check so I can put it in my gas tank so I can get home from Grambling, Louisiana.
Okay.
I need that.
And Daddy understood it.
Yep. And I said, and then when I get home, there's going to be 5,000 people in my house. And they're going to be in this house until we bury him.
That could be overwhelming sometimes.
It's so much. And then people ask you the same, are you okay? Are you okay? And like for me, the life, man, I understand that, for other people, like, you didn't even know him like that, and you were just in all these tears. And
falling out.
I'm like, let's get it together.
Yeah.
Like, let's get it together, because we have stuff to do. We got stuff to get done. And even then, at the homegoing service, I cried not because my dad passed, but I cried because there was a revelation while I was speaking, because even up there, everybody was like, you got to do something. I said, well, I don't sing. I'm not going to go do no drum solo. You know what? I yap.
Yeah.
I'm just going to grab the mic, and I'm going to just start talking. I'm going to become a comedian, because it's just what I do. And so somebody had called, I think I know Whitney Casting?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So Whitney had called me because his dad had passed a year before. And so he was like, look, everybody's going to come up to you thinking or saying that they have to say something.
Yeah.
People just feel like they have to say something. He said, but one of the main things people are going to say is, be strong. And he's like, in fact, you don't have to be strong.
Absolutely not.
Because our strength comes from the Lord, and if we can be strong on our own, we would have no need for God. And so I took it, I understood it, and then when I got up there, I was saying it because that's what I was like, that makes sense. So I'm gonna say this, but then God gave me the revelation in real time. So people thinking I'm like, I broke down because of that, but I broke down because I understood the true power of what God said. I'm gonna give you the strength to do this, so I can be weak in whatever. And then I cracked the joke right after that, and then the whole church is in tears, laughing and whatnot. And I'm still waiting on some of these. If there's anything I can do for you.
Let me tell you something about that. That line is so overused when death comes. When people say, if there's anything I can do, let me know. I promise you, there's not a single person that called me and told me, if there's anything I can do, let me know, that I didn't let them know. I told each person, I was like, well, here's the Cash App.
That part?
You know what my parents' address is. You can come and bring food one day. I gave everybody a charge. And that was weird for me, because I'm always the one to just say, oh, bless you. Okay, I'll call you. And then I'll sit there and have a need, and it goes unfulfilled. God showed me in that moment, there was a boldness that came out of me when my dad left this earth. And it came from me saying, you know what? If you're going to ask me for help, or you're going to ask me what you can do to help, I'm going to give you something to do. I don't believe in somebody saying, I'm praying for you, and an action doesn't follow. When you say, I'm praying for you, you're praying to God to say, God, what can I do to help in that situation? And in turn, prayer is a dialogue. God's going to tell you what to do, or God's going to give you what role to play. That's why I hate when people say praying for you or something like that, and then it doesn't follow with an actual action. If I tell you I'm praying for you, honestly, God's going to say, okay, now this is what you need to do. Directions come after prayer. So like all them people that told y'all, anything you could do, anything they could do, just let them know. Let them know today. It may be 13 years later. Let them know, Roland.
I'm still making calls.
Let them know.
I'm still making calls. But you said something about, your mantra, your faith of having a good day. Whatever means whatever necessary. But that was in also your new single.
That's right.
That you just dropped.
Oh yeah.
Let's talk about just another Monday, because you know what? Because it didn't feel like just another Monday for me this past Monday, because I was sick. I had to go back into the office. No, I'm talking about like sick. Like I had to go back into the office where I wasn't supposed to be going back into the office. I'm in a place where I walk past the same roach every day. I say, what's up? And he was like, just lay on his back. And, I'm just like, why am I in this situation where I could be at home, doing the same thing? And I was like, you know what? When I woke up and I was already irritated, I literally put that song on repeat all the way to work, and probably the first hour, just to kind of get through it. But let's talk about why Just Another Monday is out, and it was Just Another Monday.
The backstory to Just Another Monday. Well, it's kind of awkward coming off the cusp of a great weekend. Like Saturday and Sunday, you're having an amazing time. Leading into Monday, now you got to go back to work. Now you got to go back to that 9 to 5 that may or may not be geared towards your purpose. So it's draining, just even the idea or the concept of a Monday. So I've always had the desire to, be able to write something that's relatable, but also write from a place of like, you can overcome this. You got this. This 9 to 5. My favorite line in the song is, "This 9 to 5 is not where my heart resides. It only pays for the 5 to 9." Because after that 9 to 5 is what I really want to do. That's where my heart is, and that's what my passion is. And one day, that's going to be my career. What I want to do is what I'm going to do, and it's going to be something that's not going to feel like a job. So I wanted that song to be able to relate to every person, because everybody works a 9 to 5, and I think Monday is like literally the day that gets under people's skin. And I always say, if I can get through Monday, the rest of the week is going to be a breeze. If I can get through Monday, I'm gonna be all right. Monday has this just very eerie feeling. Even when you wake up on a Monday morning, it's crazy that you could be on vacation and not have to go back to work till Wednesday, and you still wake up on a Monday morning like, oh, like it's Monday.
Yeah.
Like it feels like Christmas is over with, So that was my thing, and I actually end the song with the line, "I'ma have a good day all day by any means necessary." My peace is my own responsibility. That's my, charge to make sure I have a great day. I can't tell Roland to make sure I have a great day, because you making sure I have a great day may cause you to have a bad day. My dad would always say, man at best is going to fail you. So you still have to work to make your day great. And Tabitha Brown says this all the time. She's like, have a good day. And if you can't have a good day, don't go messing up somebody else's. And I feel like everybody can have a good day without infringing on somebody else's, because I'm going to do what it takes to make sure that I'm in a great mindset when I go to lay my head down. It's down to sleep. Going back to what I was saying about the day my dad passed, it was still a good day, because I woke up that morning and said it was going to be a good day. That's why life and death lies in the power of the tongue, not the actual action. Because if I said, something and it came to pass like that, then that means I'm God, because God said, "Let there be light," and that's how it happened. But no, I think a lot of times the course of your mind is very much connected to the words that you speak. If you wake up in the morning and say, "I'm already drained, this day is gonna wear me out," guess what? It's gonna wear you out. But if you wake up in the morning and you say, "Today's gonna be a good day," all day, that means no matter what happens, you'll still be able to have the perspective that something good happened, and you can harbor on that something good instead of locking in on the bad thing that happened and letting the rest of the day fall down. So
I love that. So that means that we got the single that's out. You know, first was Wonderful, Wonderful.
Yes.
You know, we got Just Another Monday. We had a listening party. It means that we got an album coming out, huh?
We do have an album coming out.
We got an album coming out. Do we got a name for that project yet?
We don't.
Okay. Well, I was trying to pull an exclusive.
Man, you almost did. And people have been asking since then, when is the album going to come out? And I can honestly say, I don't know. But I mean, I finished it. You know, I've gotten to a place where I'm really comfortable. And even after the listening party rolling, I started writing more songs. So shout outs to the greatest producer. That is Just Be, Brandon Haynes. He has, he like a lot of people spoke to me and he was like, you gotta finish this music. You gotta finish this music. When I had my exit from that church, I saw Brandon at I think it was Ronaldo Hardy's live recording, and he said, "Torian, you need to be back in the studio now," and it just clicked. I went back, and we started finishing things. So, knowing your purpose again, and not letting small things completely throw you off, and that's how you know you're in the wrong place, or it's time to leave, or that place has an expiration date. Because anytime you're deterred off the path of your purpose, it's a distraction. That's how the enemy works.
This is true. So I've been privy to hear, you know, intimate parts of this project.
Lord.
You know, and like I said, I love it. It's unique. It's very unique. You know, I'm not gonna say any names, any other tracks, anything else, but you know, I do want to ask you, what do you want people to leave with when they hear this entire project?
What do I want people to leave with? What do I want people to leave with? I want people to leave with the mindset that life is not over for me. That was the whole concept of Wonderful, Wonderful. Like, things are bad. Things can be like weighing you down to the point to where you feel like there's no life left. Once you feel your chest and feel that heart still beating, you still have a purpose. There's still a reason why you're still here. Change your perspective. My biggest thing about this whole body of work is for people to shift their perspective to the fact that I can do what I'm called to do. I'm going to make it. There are elements of the album that are relatable, from one song that talks about dealing with the fact that you're not producing a sound that a lot of people expect you to do, or you walking into your purpose, but the people that you trust as advisors, like, they're not saying the same thing that God or your purpose aligns with. And it's like, well, I can't listen to them. What am I supposed to do? So this album is dedicated to the average person who's working on their purpose and trying to get there. It's a very, very inspirational album. Like I say, I'm nervous about it, but I think it's about time to be able to share my perspective on life, and I know that my story will help somebody else. My test turns into a testimony, and then my testimony turns into somebody's textbook.
I really, what we discussed, you know, because I'll be having all the ideas, I really wanted to do like an acoustic live of, you know, Just Another Monday. But, you know, I'd be talking ahead of myself, and God smacking the back of the head. He said, I told you to keep it simple. Like, you're doing too much. Like, when it come out, it's going to come out.
Oh, yeah.
But do you have anything else you want anybody to know, you know, anything, where to go stream everything, all that good jazz?
Can I look in this camera?
Yeah, that's all your camera right there.
Y'all see me? Y'all got a good shot? All right. So it's on Apple Music. It's on iTunes. It's on Spotify. It's on Pandora. It's on this thing called Deezer. Whatever you Android people use, it's on that too. And while I'm on this subject, let me say this. I've been telling Roland for as long as I've known him to let go of that Android spirit. And I'm speaking to Roland right now and those two sisters of his too, because they operate in that green message aura, and that just needs, it needs to come to, it has to cease. It has to cease.
Can I have my camera now?
But no, Google Play, YouTube Music, however y'all listen to music, you can find it there as well.
I'm pretty sure somewhere in the Bible that it says the path to heaven is narrow. I'm just saying. There's a lot of apples walking down these streets.
Wow.
Just saying.
That is crazy. That is crazy.
You know, I just want to give you some revelation. You know, that's all.
Our dads would be throwing stuff right now about why are y'all using scripture to dictate whether you should have an Apple or an Android.
I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
But Daryl Henderson was delivered from that Android spirit before he passed. Before he passed, our group chat was blue messages.
Blue messages.
We serve a mighty God.
But bro, I appreciate you coming on, man.
Absolutely.
I really, dog, like, you know, this, you know, I'm pretty sure when people watch this, they were like, I've seen a side of Torian Henderson that I have not seen before. I've, you know, because I'm be honest with you, it almost feels like that first episode of Den of Kings with Kurt Franklin. Did you watch that one?
I saw clips of it. I need to watch it. Those clips are amazing.
It's actually really good.
Oh yeah.
And so everybody came in the expectation of like, oh, we're just gonna joke and clown, and it was just nothing but like gems and revelation and everything else. And what this one was like for real.
Oh yeah, I dare not get behind a microphone and just forsake the opportunity to help somebody else that's watching, because you never know, like a situation like this. This podcast can stop somebody from not only ending their life, but giving up on what they're called to do, because they're surrounded by, you know, quote unquote church folk who say, no, you shouldn't do that. You need to do this. You know, I hope that you continue disrupting the system. Keep doing it, because it's needed. It's needed. Every generation, God calls somebody to just come in and flip the tables, because things have to change as we go on and operate in certain design systems. We get stuck and forget that God, even though God's word is never changing, God's methods cater to the time, and we need to do the same thing. So kudos to you. This is great,
man. I appreciate it. You know, we gonna keep moving forward. There's just so much, you know, and that's one of the biggest kudos or flowers I want to give you, of taking that step out of making the sound in a way that people would deem that's not needed, or that's whatever their method is, and how it's going to help the people that's been forsaken or forgotten, people that are in the gaps. People that didn't even know they needed that, you know, and be able to reach, you know, masses that literally nobody else could reach, because you have something so unique that is going to be received in a unique way, and that's only something that God trusted you, you know, and placed in you, because He couldn't trust nobody else to do.
Oh, and I had to earn that trust too. Had to earn it.
That's another story for another day.
Man, that's a whole other podcast. Oh man.
But no, if there's nothing else that you want to tell the people, you know, I'm gonna tell y'all once again: if you ain't liked, if you ain't put a comment, if you ain't subscribed, we ain't cool. I need you to do that. We here in Journeywell. Come, you know, journeywell.io. Y'all know the rest, you know. But I appreciate you again, my guy. And I always say, always remember, keep on rolling. God dog it. We done.
Why was there no food here?
We wasn't here long enough to have food.
It's 8:30.
Yeah, you should be eating a salad at this point.
I had a salad today, and that's why I'm starving.
My bad.
I've been changing my diet for real.
Okay.
I have.
Okay.
Like, I went to the gym this morning, and bruh,